Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this week's Building Power. I am your host, Zakiya and today we're going to be having a really good, thorough conversation about, what we all have been seeing in the news or seeing in some of our networks that's been kind of sweeping the country, and that's this anti-critical race theory curriculum and really anti-understanding American history, the truth of American history, and history of colonialism and imperialism in the West in general. But I'm joined by an expert that I admire, that I have been had the opportunity as well to work with. Finally, I was excited about that. And someone who is doing what I believe is critical work. Like I like do not envy her, but she's good at what she does. Let's just be honest about that. Our sister Catrice Jackson. Catrice is a Black woman who loves, centers, and celebrates Blackness every day while living her best Black life unapologetically. She is the CEO of Catriceology Enterprises, LLC. She is the chief conductor at Harriet's Dream, LLC, a racial trauma healing and wellness center for Black women, and the host of the Black Couch Conversations, a Black ass podcast for Black folks with a psychological twist. She is also an anti-racism speaker and educator. She serves up strong medicine and hard truths to eliminate the lethal infection of racism. She is also the creator of She Talks, We Talk, Race Talks for Women. She Talks, He Listens, and the author of 11 books, including Weapons of Whiteness, White Spaces, Missing Faces, The Becky Code, and listen, y'all ain't even ready. I'm trying to tell you. Antagonists, Advocates and Allies, and Unfuckable with. What? Catrice's message is straight up on the rocks with no chaser, unbothered by naysayers, unflinching in her approach, and Catrice's dedication to Black people is what motivates her behind this personal movement of justice is love. Woo, Lord, I'm telling you, we got the right one today. And this, I would not even dream of having nobody else to have this conversation with right now. Seriously. And I'm honored that you agreed to be here, sister. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. And you and I have worked together before. And so,
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's just jump right into it because listen, girl, that bio is fire. listen, I am always interested in other Black people's journey in this work, right? What was the trigger? What was the impetus that got you on this path? Like, oh, listen, no, this is what we got to do. I'm going to write these books. I'm getting ready to start this podcast. I'm getting ready to really deal with this in the way that it needs to be done. Like you said, unapologetically. What was the spark?
Oh, so many sparks, but I think the one spark that really kicked it off was Trayvon Martin. And at the time, I was living away from my own son, my only child. And I believe he was probably about 18 or 19 at the time. And I had moved to Texas, and he was supposed to come. I went, set up camp, all that good stuff, me and my husband. And then he decided he didn't want to join us. And I was devastated because I had never been away from him. But while I was there living in Texas, that's when Trayvon Martin was murdered. And all I could think about was my son away from me, walking the streets of Omaha in a hoodie, and something happened to him. And I knew then that I had to do something. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to get it done. And so unfortunately or fortunately, it took a personal revelation, if you will, to see my son in those shoes, if you will. And so, in all honesty, it took me about 2 years to find that unapologetic, unflinching way that I do it. But every day that I did it, I just kept saying, if things like this continue to happen, well, and we already knew that they had been happening, but I think that kind of put it in the spotlight. There's no time. There's absolutely no time to be sugarcoating this, to be dancing around the issues, to be, holding white people by the hand and speaking softly and kindly to them when our babies are being murdered. And so it took me about 2 years to really build up the momentum. But once I locked in and felt that the energy and the freedom of being unapologetic, it's been full steam ahead since.
And we appreciate you for that. I just want to say that because I've watched you for a couple of years now, and you are very unapologetic. And you have to even like gather some black folks, right? Like you have to gather them on up. You know what I'm saying? I've just seen you gather a few, right?
Yes.
In that spirit, kind of share a little bit of after your 2 years, right? Because you kind of, I'm sure, like you said, it took you to 2 years to really get there. How has the experience been since? I know from working with you that you actually have a cohort of white women specifically. That's the other thing. How did you decide to really hone in on white women? What
Mm,
was that? That's what
yeah.
I want to know.
That's the sweet spot right there. Well, primarily my work before that was with women, so it was already a comfort zone. Prior to this work, believe it or not, I was doing branding and marketing work, and so I was already doing like empowerment summits and empowerment conferences for women, and so working with women was really the comfort zone and the sweet spot. But what I noticed is that all the things that I talk about now, the white woman violence, that all was happening while I was working with women. And I saw it, I felt it, I knew what it was. I didn't always have the language to put my finger on exactly what that violence was. But I saw that white woman shit and I thought, this I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. And so when I started to dive deeper into racial justice and learning more about it and kind of wrapping my arms around it, it was very clear to me that, there's a beast that hunts us as black folks and non-white folks. And the beast is white terrorism. I don't call it white supremacy because there's nothing supreme about the horrendous, heinous things that white people have done to black and brown bodies in this country. It is pure terrorism. And so that is the beast that hunts us daily, even in our sleep. And so, I started to look back at history and kind of see how this thing, at least in America, has evolved. And white women have always been at the table. They've always been complicit to the crimes against black bodies in this country. They're the ones that these so-called terrorists, these KKK members or whatever it is you want to call them, they had to come home and somebody had to cook their meals and have their babies and wash their clothes and you know so white women have always been present and active. History wants to write it in a way that says that they were silent or that they were bystanders. No, they weren't. They were always active participants in the crimes against black bodies. And so I knew that was it. I knew that that was the space that I needed to be in, the audience that I needed to target. And, I tell them straight up, like, white women are the neck of the beast. And the
Wow.
head don't move without the neck. The head don't move without the neck, right?
Wow. That's that's absolutely historically accurate. Number one.
Hmm.
Number two, you're absolutely right that white women have managed, and I believe through sort of the introduction of the so-called women's rights, suffrage, and feminism, and things like that, which was clearly very white women led, and also very anti-black and racist. A lot of people
Hmm.
don't like to talk about that, especially feminists. Um, but there's a sister that wrote a book not too long ago, a couple of years ago. You're probably familiar with it, called "They Were Her Property," and
Yes.
actually talked about the fact that white women were not bystanders. They did not just get their wealth because of their husband's death and they owned the slaves after that. No, they were also very active slave masters themselves. The slave
Hmm.
masters is often gendered as male and is white male.
Hmm.
And her book goes into that very deep. They were her property. And I encourage anybody to pick up that book and read it. And not only that, I mean, we see it today. And like you said, even in your work, working on different jobs and things like that, you see sort of the power that they have. And I don't think that we also articulate in this country that white women are the second most powerful group in this country behind their
Absolutely.
men, the second
Absolutely.
most wealthiest group in this country behind their men. So those are the kind of things that don't get talked about, and that's what I think is so unique about you, is because you focus on this specific demographic, and I think it's literally, like I said, I don't envy you. It's critical work. And I know you have a particular way that you do it, and so here's the thing, and I want to like pivot to why we're here today and why we are talking about white women and their role in the anti-critical race theory conversation. Is like you alluded to it, they're the mothers, right? They're the primary probably caretakers when it comes to schooling, especially K through 12 school. We're seeing them show up to board meetings. We're seeing them, go against what is right and just, not just for black children but for all children. We need to know the truth about what's happening in this country, and race in and of itself. We didn't create race, so why y'all mad? Like, we black people didn't even create it. Y'all created it to control people and to segregate people and to say who was worthy and who wasn't. So like,
Hmm.
now y'all don't want to talk about that.
Hmm. Isn't that ironic that they created race? But now why is everything got to be about race, Catrice? Why this? Why that? Look, y'all started this,
Y'all started
right?
it. It wasn't us.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit, and now I want to bring up a video in a minute. Tell us a little bit about like some of the experiences that you've had since, right, working with this cohort of white women on the spectrum of, like you said, I know you're in the Lions Den every day, like the spectrum of people who like lash out at you, people who come in thinking they're ready, they're not. And then tell us about the ones who've been rocking with you the entire time. I'm really interested in their psychology.
Hmm. Yeah. So one of the questions that I pose in the workshops that I do, and I think you mentioned those, she talks, we talk. I take those workshops around the nation. The past 3 years, I have, kind of went all over the place. But this year, I decided to host them all in the Twin Cities. And believe it or not, next year may be the last year that I offer those workshops. I'm kind of feeling like I'm on the edge with it, but we'll see. But one of the questions that I ask right away in that workshop is, has there ever been a time in American history when white women have took to the streets and thousands and thousands and thousands of people marching, protesting, shutting shit down, demanding and saying, listen, enough is enough. You are going to stop hurting Black women. You're going to stop abusing and oppressing and marginalizing Black and Brown Indigenous women. Has there ever been that time in history where we can note that white women have took to the streets on behalf of their so-called sisters in the movement, the feminist movement, to say no more? And every single time I ask that question, the answer is always absolutely not. There is no time. And so, why has there not been a time that white women have rallied themselves like they rallied for the Women's March about 3 years ago? So, we know they're capable, right? We know they're capable of organizing and mobilizing and taking to the streets to do what's quote unquote right. But why have they not done that for Black and Brown women? And it always puzzles the white women when I ask them that question, but I ask it because it's one of the questions that startles them and wakes them up to say what I believe and know to be true is that white women don't give a damn.
They
At the
also
end of
don't benefit, right? Like
right,
it's not in their interest.
right. There's nothing to gain for them. And so therefore it doesn't matter. But even at a deeper psychological level, from a humanistic point of view, they don't care. They don't care about Black and brown women, period. Because if they did, they would have already taken to the streets. And so that's one thing that I say to like startle them into this new awakening. So over the last 4 years, I have been able to gather some white women who are committed to doing the work. Some come in and think they're committed to doing the work, and when if they get that taste of that Catriceology medicine, they're like, "Oh hell no!" They bail. They're out of there. But I just commented in my group the other day and said, shout out to those of you who've been here 3 years, and it's about 10 folks, 10 women who met me 3 years ago and have committed themselves to staying in the cohort, staying in the collective, doing the work, not waving their white flag and getting comfortable and going back into complacency. And they stay committed, and they do what's required of them. Most of our work in that collective is around nourishing and supporting Black women and also economic justice.
So glad that you brought that up. I love the economic justice part
Mm-hmm.
because oftentimes in this work around racial justice, I think, especially in recent history, the economic justice part gets lost.
Yes.
And this is not a time that economic justice can get lost or should be lost. I'll share a quick example with you. I live in the DC region, which has been known historically, I mean, for decades, years, as being recession proof,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's known for having a good economy and all of that, even for, people of color and Black folks and all of that, right? And I live in a community, a county that is very diverse, but is also known to be the home of the Real Housewives of Potomac. So there is that demographic where there's the really high, wealthy, high net worth, all of that, Chevy Chase, Potomac, all of that. And so the county is wealthy where I live. And there are resources, and the schools and all that are good. I put in air quotes when it comes to Black folks. You know how I go.
Mm-hmm.
They still find a way to under resource our kids. Anyway, and I was horrified. And I have to say, I moved from Dayton, Ohio to here about 5 years ago. And so, that's the Midwest. You know about that. That's where you at. And
Mm-hmm.
like, the Midwest, particularly the Ohio, the Michigan, and Indiana sort of trifecta region there, even some in Pennsylvania, that trifecta there was the Rust Belt, or the industrial Rust Belt of the country, that was all about manufacturing and building General Motors and Ford cars. That's long gone. And so the economic base dropped out, particularly for Black folks who was
Mm-hmm.
in those jobs, right, making a high middle class earning income. That is erased. And so with that comes all of the issues with that, with the schools and everything. And so I'm framing all that to say, I noticed they were locking up baby formula at the grocery stores, right? Locking up necessities for babies to live, right? I mean, locking up socks, uh, other things that like people need. So these are things that people need but don't have the resources, and we don't have a social safety net that makes sure that people have their basic needs met. Here we are in this county where the real housewives of Potomac live, the same county, locking up baby formula. COVID has exacerbated what we already know, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Locking up baby formula.
Yep.
I was horrified. 2 days ago, I walked into my neighborhood giant grocery store and a security guard was standing there. And I just looked. I said, wow. The nation's capital, near the nation's capital, right? The capital region, as they call it, recession proof, federal jobs all throughout the wazoo, federal contract jobs throughout the wazoo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that level of poverty here. And I said, our elected officials are not doing what they're supposed to do, but also everyday people, high net worth everyday people are
Mm-hmm.
also not doing what they're supposed to do. Because number one, they're not paying taxes the way that they should be. But number
Mm-hmm.
two, like they just don't, like you said, they don't give a damn. And so if you can just really quickly talk about what that looks like, the economic justice part, and what is the requirement for these women to have an economic justice framework with the racial justice. I would love to
Mm-hmm.
hear that from you.
Well, one of the main things that I teach when I'm, working with them is how all of what they have access to, the resources, the opportunities, the connections, the homes, I mean everything that they have access to is a result of racism. It's a result of, white terroristic, systemic racism that allows them, like you said, to be number two. And speaking of number two, I smash that right. I get rid of that thing right away. When we're talking about levels of oppression, if you will, um, and help them first to see how they are number two, and how that they actually need to stop saying, oh, we're going to smash the patriarchy. Okay, hold up. You can smash it, but you need to be smashing the patriarchy called white men, because black and brown men do not have power over you. So that's one of the first steps, is to get them to see that, to
Say that.
understand that.
Say that again.
Yes.
Like they love this the global patriarchy. No,
Hmm.
let's talk about who we talking about, because patriarchy has a power just like racism is about power. I want to
Hmm.
know the power that especially that black men have over white women. Can somebody explain that to me in the comments? What is the power? Because they
Well,
don't.
they absolutely do not. And so I take them way back into a history lesson and bring them forward. One of the scenes that I use when I'm doing some teaching is the scene on 12 Years a Slave, the scene where, uh, Master Epps um, decides that he's going to brutalize Patsy for going and getting a piece of soap. And if the scene is, the mistress is right there. She's in the background. She's in her white pretty dress. She's prim and proper, back straight, basically standing there watching this black woman be brutalized. And I use different scenes like that, different, scenarios, different pieces of education to show how historically white women have always been number two, how they continue to have the power. And we already know what happens when a white woman screams or hollers or says she's afraid or intimidated when a black man is in her presence. He doesn't have any power over that situation. And so I do that education to get them to get that into their mind, because if they can understand that, then they can begin to see themselves as number two. And once they see themselves as number two, then they can really see exactly what kind of unearned power that they have, which includes all the money, all the resources, all the, ability to get a loan and buy a house and all the things that they do. And so one of the things that I teach as it relates to that is that this work is supposed to make you uncomfortable mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. You should be concerned about how you're going to pay your bills this month, because you're so busy paying reparations, money that's owed, debt that's owed. And, some of them get very uncomfortable with that, and that, they can't deal with it. But those who have locked in and they get it and they understand it, they clearly know that there is no racial justice without economic justice. And so that means moving money and transferring power, and all the ways that we do that. That could be as small as, and I don't really see it as small, but it could be as small as making sure that a Black mother has food on her table every month, that she has, the ability to buy formula and diapers. It could mean relocating a Black woman who's in a domestic violence situation and making sure that her plane ticket is covered and that she's set up when she gets there, and that, she's got at least 3 to 6 months of financial support. It could mean, the Catriceology homes for Black women, where we are raising funds to help Black women buy homes debt free. So, the economic justice work that we do within this collective, and what I call white women to do all across the nation and the world, is to move money and transfer power. I have actually, Zakiya, had people step down out of roles so that Black women can step into them. Like, are you serious about transferring power? Okay, well, let's get this work in then. Are you the most qualified person to be there? Well, no, not really. There's a fabulous Black woman who really, okay, then step down.
Wow.
And
You got
sometimes they
receipts.
do.
Wow.
So, that's the fruit of the labor. But man, let me tell you about the labor.
Tell
It
me
is
about
like
it.
swimming with sharks every single day,
Well,
whether that's
shit.
online, whether it's in a workshop, whether it's in my cohort, dealing with these white women to get them able to be the accomplices that we need them to be. Ain't no joke. I mean, I'm dealing with what I call weapons of whiteness all day, every day. And it's exhausting. But at the same time, I really feel like this is the work that I was created to do,
Mm-hmm.
that I've been given a certain amount of resiliency and what I call detached compassion in order to be able to do this.
Wow. Woo. Detached compassion. Girl, if you don't unpack that,
And so,
ooh.
the white women who, go on these rants and raves about how horrible Catrice is, I've been told that my work is abusive. I need help. I need to go get therapy. All kinds of stuff. I've had people write op-eds about me, slander my name all across the internet. You name it, I've experienced it. And so that's what I mean by swimming with sharks. It's always something. But and so what people tend to think is that I hate white people. And that's not the case. I don't hate white
I've
people,
gotten that before
but
too,
I
doing
hate
my work.
racism
Yeah.
and I hate white terrorism. And so, in order to be able to do this work, believe it or not, I have to have some kind of compassion for these folks, as violent as they are, right? Meaning that I have to be able to believe that there's some humanity in there for me to tap into. If I don't believe that there's any humanity in there for me to tap into, then you know uh, the work doesn't even make sense. I shouldn't even be doing it. So one of the things that I help them discover, and I think this is why those who stay for as long as they do, is that I help them find their humanity for the first time, not reconnect to it, but find it. And so I have to have some level of compassion to do the work, but be so detached from it that I don't get sucked in and that I don't allow myself to be used and abused in a way that keeps me from doing the work. And so it's kind of similar to like being a therapist. Like you can have compassion for your clients, and sometimes certain clients really hit home and you really feel for them, but you have to be emotionally wise enough and emotionally strong enough to not get enmeshed with your clients. You have to keep some kind of distance, and I think I use that same kind of action when I'm working with white women. Um, And so that's what I call it. It's detached compassion. Like I can feel from you from way over here, right? Or I can understand you from way over here, or I can have some kind of compassion for you from way over here, because I know if I get close with you with that compassion, they'll use those weapons of whiteness against me left and right. And so it's a practice that I've kind of like honed in on as a therapist. And I use that same technique when I'm working with them.
That's some real science you just dropped. And I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, wow, because I know that one of the things you mentioned earlier that white women and girls particularly know how to do is center themselves, use tears, because most of us are very compassionate. You see somebody crying, you feel compassion, and you want to back, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I should have found another way. You know what I'm saying? It's like then
Mm-hmm.
you blame yourself
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
things that was righteous, right? But they pulled you off of your square. You know what I'm saying? And you just described that so well, where you have compassion, but you're not pulling me off of my square right now.
That's right.
I
That's right.
love that.
And you
That's
know
some real
what?
science. Yeah.
You know why they use the tears, and
It
why
works.
and why they expect us to do something with those tears? Because they've mammified us.
Oh shit, girl. Lord have mercy. Mm.
I mean, when name a time in this country where white women haven't used black women as their mammy.
Whew.
So they expect us to turn around and coddle them and hold them and say it's going to be okay, and it's all right. No, we don't do that over here. We I don't
Wait.
do that. So when they cry, it's a form of manipulation. It's a very strategic tactic. It's a form of narcissism, and they cry with the intent to derail what you're really talking about or what's happening, to deflect from that, to take you off your square, and then to spin it around to make you the villain, and not only make you the villain, but then take it to the next sick level. And then you're the villain, but they still want you to come and comfort them and say, it's going to be okay, Karen. I know you didn't mean it. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's all some sick psychological stuff that is in the minds of whiteness, that's in the minds of white women. And that's why I call them weapons of whiteness. I started off when I first started doing this work with 3 or 4 weapons, and I'm up to like almost 50 now.
Ooh. Wow. Well, you didn't drop a whole lot of science in this first half hour segment. I want to, because I wanted people to hear this, and I wanted people to know like the real impactful work that you're doing is not just for show. You have written books. I mean, you've done this. You're doing this, right? And I
Mhm.
want to tee up this clip because I thought about you. We have a clip of a white woman who is, I believe, at a school board meeting. And I just want to play this really quickly for the audience and have you respond.
Because I do not want critical race theory taught to my children in school does not mean that I'm a racist, damn it.
So there is the tears that you just explained as a tactic. That's a school board meeting. Now that's just one clip, right? Like this has been happening all across the country. And thankfully somebody posted that on Twitter. So that's how we got it. Um, your reflections.
Mm. Well, let me just say this. It's classic. It's textbook. It's exactly what you expect from white women. I'm not shocked by it anymore. I expect to see exactly that. It's a piece from what I call the white woman script. And it's predictable. You already know what's going to happen. You already know how they're going to respond. And even though sometimes we already know that they're going to respond that way, it doesn't take the violence out of it. And I call it violence because what they're doing is causing harm in some kind of way, whether that's emotional, spiritual, physical or psychological. I call it white woman violence. And so, what she's really afraid of is a couple of things. The two things that I see that this woman is afraid of by not allowing, this to be, taught to her kids, is she's afraid to lose power. Number one. Because if somebody gets educated or somebody's enlightened or somebody, decides to be or do something different that better serves humanity, then that means things get spread out, right? Hopefully that means that, and that resources get spread out, and people are treated the way that they deserve to be treated. But she doesn't want to lose power. And the second thing that I believe is happening with her is that she doesn't want to look at the ugly person in the mirror. She knows that if she looks in the mirror and sees that wretched racism, that, horrible anti-blackness that's deep down in her soul, she's going to be devastated. And believe it or not, when I ask them to do this exercise, literally, I say, you need to get a box. You need to go down into the dungeon of your soul and trust and believe down there are piles and piles and piles of anti-blackness. You need to go down there and pick up one pile. You need to bring it up, put it in your box, bring it upstairs, put it on the table, sort that stuff out one by one, look at it, own it, and then figure out how you're going to eradicate it, how you're going to get rid of it. Don't tell me that it's not there. I know that it's down there. And so that lady is afraid. She's afraid to have to look in the mirror to see the ugliness of what is really inside of her. And it's that anti-blackness and it's white woman violence.
Yeah, it's really sad, and I think you articulated it well. And to your point, as far as like losing power, um, the mostly male legislators in states across this country have been responding to those tears. They have been coming to the rescue. Um, Governor in Oklahoma just signed into law the anti-critical race theory in the curriculum there. Tennessee, I believe the governor is on his way. That both of the state legislatures have passed them, and now it's on its way to the governor's desk, I believe, if it has not already been signed. States, not only that, school boards across this country have been banning, all across the country have been banning um, critical race theory in the curriculum. So when white women, and I have to preface this, before working for any national organization, I was a Black mother impacted by the racism and anti-Blackness in education, in
Mm-hmm.
preschool, when it came to my baby, when it came to my son. I organized other Black mothers. I organized other Black folks in general in Ohio, or red, so-called red state, all that, right? Republicans, all of that. And I organized, and I just saw how hard it is, how we were not believed, how people didn't care, just the nonchalantness to our tears about the violence that was happening to our 3-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
literally babies, being expelled from preschool, right? And how we had to organize to, I mean, and really fight hard. Some of my parents, some of these Black women were losing their jobs, Catrice, because their
Mm-hmm.
babies were being kicked out of preschool so much they could not keep their jobs. Okay. And I remember when we made the front page of the news because people were so shocked that, wow, these Black folks, these Black women are organizing. They're saying their kids are being, this is stuff that's going on. And do you know it took us years, let me just, years to get a ban on preschool suspensions in the state of Ohio.
Mm.
It has taken months for these people to ban critical race theory because of the tears of the white mothers coming to the school boards, starting organizations, being funded for Black mothers. Shit, come on now.
Listen, I believe you, and I believe you because I fought for my son's dignity and his humanity from preschool to 2 days before he graduated high school. I know the fight. I believe you. I know exactly what you and those mothers have had to do just to get the bare minimum for your kids. Not anything exceptional or out of the ordinary, just the bare minimum of decency and dignity and humanity. So I believe it 100%. But know this: white women have been and they always are the gatekeepers to the school to prison pipeline. They're the ones at the gate saying, come on in. They're the ones right behind the kids pushing them in. You know, every time they write something, every time they document something, every time they refer that kid, to the principal or to the counselor or whoever it is that they refer them to, they're creating the path. They're opening the door. They're pushing our kids through because, I don't know the exact number, but I'm estimating that, that teachers are, in regards to teachers, about 80% of them are white women.
Oh, it's more nationally. Yeah, it's a little bit higher, but white women, like the police, have a monopoly on the teaching profession, as well as white men having a monopoly on the policing
That's right.
profession.
And they're
And
the social workers.
both of them, social workers too, but both
Hmm.
of them are killing us in different ways.
Say
Teachers are
that.
killing the spirits of Black children in these schools.
Emotionally abusive every day. And imagine that we send our kids into these school systems to we send our kids into these school systems in agreement with allowing them to abuse our kids. And I say agreement because we we don't always have another option. We don't have our own schools. We don't have enough of our own schools. And so we know we have to send our babies to these schools, to these wretched white women who are doing a psychological act of terror on our children. I've actually created a course, a 4-week course, for teachers specifically on how to, and I say less because I don't believe it ever can be, I don't believe that it can ever be fully eradicated, how
Right,
to
right.
be less anti-black to our kids when they're in your presence.
What
Um,
has the response been to that, dealing with teachers? And I know, like, before we end, I want you to please tell people how they, number one, can support your work, right? Resource it. Number
mhm,
two, I want you to tell people where can they find you, right? If there's white women watching this, how do they join?
absolutely.
Especially these teachers, because we're education, as you know, education platform, and so
Right.
we have a lot of educators, parents, all kinds of people who are interested in this racial justice in education. So definitely those three things you have to share, because I already know people are going to want to know.
Well, thank you for that. But one of the first things I'd like to say is that we got to stop this foolery and this facade in the education system, and actually in all of the systems, that inclusion and equity is the path to go. It is not. One of the things that I say is that diversity is dead and inclusion is an illusion. We're not going to get anywhere with those strategies, with those teachings, with those trainings, with those workshops. We
You
need
are
straight
teaching
up.
today. We got to drop your cash app because you're dropping too much science. I'm serious. This is science.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We got to go straight to the jugular. We got to go straight to anti-racism, period. That's it. Then, after we do enough anti-racism work within these systems and organizations, then we can circle back around to diversity and inclusion. I get people who call me all the time. Catrice, can you come and do a inclusion or an equity this? No, no, I turn it down and I tell them don't ask me for that. Now, however, if you want to do anti-racism work and you want to commit to working a year with me, then we can talk. I'm not doing anything for less than a year. I'm just finishing up a year with a nonprofit in Milwaukee, and we are just getting started. It took a year to get the momentum going, to finally get them. But I will say that this organization has committed and is doing the work to becoming an anti-racist organization, which is remarkable as far as I'm concerned. It's probably the only nonprofit in the state of Milwaukee who's committed to doing the work. And so you asked the question about how is this, course going for teachers? Well, I'll be honest and say it's not something that I've pushed really hard because it's new. I've only been offering it for the last year, but I'm getting more, spirit is leading me more to say you need to start helping, stop this violence that's happening against our babies and that's happening in preschool and K through 12 and on up. So I hope to push that a little bit more. I have had quite a few people go through that course and are very grateful for the insight that they received from it. And, I don't have a way to quantify how it's actually affecting, how things are happening in the schools, but it's a start.
Schools have been closed for a year and it's been online, so
Right.
that's also a part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but anyway, absolutely. If there are white folks watching, or if white women who are interested in getting on this journey, my main website is catriceology.com. And then if they want to attend an in-person workshop, She Talks, We Talk, they can go to shetalkswetalk.com. And also there's a tab on that website for the Socially Conscious Women's Collective, which is the cohort that I lead, helping white women navigate their anti-racism journey.
Those are being dropped in the comments for all of our viewers and listeners. And we can also make sure we include that in the description later as well on the video. So the Catriceology website is being shared. And we certainly also have the She Talks, We Talk website being shared as well with everyone so that people, who are interested, particularly if there's teachers who are interested in that course that you designed, that's critical. I sure wish those white teachers who was pathologizing my son when he was 3 years old, if they're still teaching, oh Lord, they need to take this course.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine how many other Black children and Black boys whose parents who didn't understand or did not know that what they were being told was wrong about their children. Like, I can't imagine how many Black children have been put into the pipeline, the prison from those, as you say, wretched
Wretched.
teachers. Just
Wretched.
wretched. How could you look at a 3-year-old and pathologize him already? A baby. Like, because of the humanity in me, I don't look at even white. I could not do a white child the way that white teachers are doing Black children every single day in this country.
Yep.
Every single day.
And that's
My
why
humanity wouldn't allow me.
that's why I say my work helps them find their humanity for the first time. Isn't it ironic that they look at us as less as human, but when we look at the historical violence of whiteness, who's really inhumane?
Anytime you can hang somebody from a tree, cut off body parts, mail them to people,
And bring
and
your
take a
kids to
picture,
watch.
and take a picture,
And bring your kids to watch
and
and
bring your
pack a lunch.
kids to watch.
Sick. I have no hesitation when I say that whiteness it's sick. There's some sickness there. And I don't take it to the level to call it a mental illness, because then I know white folks will run with that and they'll say, "Oh, I can't help it, Catrice, because I got a mental illness." But there is some serious pathology, and being a licensed mental health professional and also someone who's completed my doctoral courses and working on my dissertation, psychology is the frame, and it's the lens that I use to do this work. And so I know the pathology of whiteness, and man, when I tell you it is a sick mindset, it's heinous, it's wretched.
I'm glad that you shared that you actually are a professional when it comes to being able to actually know and diagnose pathology, because people
Yes.
be like, well, they'll make an issue of that. But so, yes, this has been great, Catrice. I am just so honored and grateful for you, and for your calling, if you will, to do
Mhm.
this work. That is not my ministry, honey. Okay. Ain't no way. Listen.
Listen, I understand. And that's why sometimes I'm thinking, Lord, come on with the fortification because look, I don't know. I keep saying 2023, I might be on my way out, but
Yeah.
I'm just gonna let God lead me.
Yes, that's it. This was an amazing talk. I actually would love to have you back, and to love, especially once you the courses that you're doing specifically with teachers. We'll also refer you to people, like, because I people usually go back and watch these videos. Um, so when people ask, about that course, we'll definitely refer them to your Catriceology website, or anyway, the way to contact you to, like, just figure out any type of details when you're off and whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and also so they understand that it's a real commitment, and that there will be a year minimum, all of that.
Yeah,
Just so grateful, because the work that you're doing is actually going to save a lot of our kids' spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being in schools. And to me, that means everything. It
absolutely.
does. To me, it means
Absolutely.
everything.
One
Seriously.
one of the things that keeps me motivated to do the work is that I don't always see the fruit directly, if you will. But my hope is, and every now and then I get an email or a text or something where some random Black woman that I've never met somewhere in the country says, Catrice, there's a white lady working with you and her name is whatever. And let me just say, she's phenomenal. She's helping me. She has done this, she has done that. And so, it's that motivates me to know that hopefully that the white women who are serious about doing this work will be less harmful and more nourishing to Black women that I may never encounter, to Black children that I may never encounter. And so that's one piece that keeps me going.
That's it. I love it. Thank you, Catrice. Thank you for coming to Building Power Grassroots Education Advocacy today. Again, we appreciate you. We have shared how people can support your work, both links, and so we hope that you see some increased traffic to your website. I'm in fact, I'm sure you will. See some increased traffic to your website, because people were all in the comments, like, really enjoying all the science, as I call it, that you was dropping today, because
Yes.
it was real. I'm actually going to go back and watch this episode myself, quite honestly.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also going to continue to push it out in some specific education groups that are on social media, because I do think that is critical, that other educators specifically have an opportunity to see this. Thank you, Catrice. This has been great. I, as you know, will be in touch. And because I also want to figure out a way that I can partner with you in some ways, to help support what you're doing, because I love it and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure to be here, and remind me to send you a video clip where you can see that pathology in action.
Yes, I will. I'm gonna remind you. Like, girl, you said you
Hmm.
was sending me a clip. Now, where is that?
Thank you so
Take
much,
care,
sis. I love
everybody.
you.
Yes, love you too. See
All
you
right.
next week, same place, same time. Take care.